Well, first of all, I'd just like to say that it is a privilege to be able to participate in this video handbook for inmates in the Department of Correctional Services, because a lot of inmates need information, and they need credible information so that they can be better informed, especially at the point when they enter the various institutions. We want to ensure that inmates know the rules, are able to comply with the rules, and benefit from the various programs that we have. And this can only be done through proper information. We have a number of areas in terms of regulations and standing orders. We're governed by the Corrections Act and the proclamations, rules and regulations. And of course, the overarching law is the Constitution of Jamaica. In addition, this office issues standard operating procedures and guidelines to the staff to regulate the affairs of the department. The main areas of focus for this department is rehabilitation. And when an inmate enters, the first thing that happens is that the documents that come with him from the police are handed over to the officer, and a reception process takes place. After the reception process is completed, there is the risk needs assessment, case management, and sentence planning. Because of severe overcrowding in our two major male reception centers, we're not able to carry out proper case management and sentence planning. However, to a large extent, this happens in our other adult and juvenile institutions. The major areas of interest to inmates are the security requirements, visits, issues of parole, issues of work programs, appeal, reprieves, because most times they want to know, how can I appeal if I feel I'm not guilty? How can I apply for parole? Or how can I earn the privilege of parole? The department has a number of programs. There is the rehabilitation schemes, or conditional release, and in other jurisdictions it's called day parole or weekend parole. In our situation, we have the parole board, which receives applications from inmates 6 months prior to them becoming eligible to apply for parole, and that gives us sufficient time to process the application. The applicant completes a form, it is submitted to the superintendent, and information on the person's employment opportunities or persons offering them employment is critical. From there, the application is processed through our head office. The probation aftercare services prepare their necessary reports. The superintendent prepares his. There's the case summary from the court, a report from the police, the victim, and we also have to get information from the community where the individual lived or where they intend to return. This report is then submitted to the parole board, and they deliberate on the application, look at the merits of the case, and make a decision whether to grant parole or not. In some instances, there have been cases where the parole board may be favorable to granting parole, but are not satisfied that the community is ready to receive the offender. In that case, we then opt for restorative justice interventions so that we don't have the cycle of violence continuing. We are primarily focusing on the post-sentencing restorative justice process. It means having dialogue with the offender, the victim, or the victim's relatives in cases where the victim is no longer alive, and getting them to a point where they would agree to meet with the offender, meeting with the victim, and to mediate the process so that both parties reach an understanding that in cases where the person has been wronged, they are satisfied that the person is sorry about the act that they committed, and to seek restoration or forgiveness. We have what we call conditional release, and inmates who are classified as C or D are eligible under our policy for conditional release. You have the highest classification in terms of risk and security as Class A, and the lowest classification is D, which is a low risk classification. The A's and B's are considered to be high or medium to high risk. The C's and D's are medium and medium to low risk. The release can be a day release, or it can be a weekend pass, and it can be escorted or unescorted. The applications which do not require escort, we have taken a decision to have the parole board make those decisions, and in terms of escorted releases, I would be the person to make that decision. Program was suspended sometime in 2002 following the escape of a number of inmates who participated in it. These inmates were of all categories. Some of them had no end date in terms of their sentence. Some had no parole eligibility date. So they were working towards no specific objective. They became despondent, and of course they escaped. We have looked at the lessons learned from the previous administration and taken a decision in consultation with the Ministry of National Security that only prisoners who commit non-violent offenses will be allowed to participate in the program. So that's a significant distinction from the previous one. We intend to start with the female inmates in a pilot project, and we're currently sensitizing our staff on the new provisions of the conditional release. So individuals will be able to participate in educational programs, work programs, and home visits under that. All the other persons who do not qualify will have to be engaged in internal programs. The classification is primarily driven by the offense the person has committed for which they have been sentenced. In addition, a risk needs assessment is done, and based on the person's behavior and compliance with our regulations and protocols, they can be reclassified. So a person could come in as a Class A inmate and be reclassified to a B, or a B to a C, or a C to a D. This, however, has to be taken in context of the risk needs assessment, and also in terms of our reoffending rate and the current level of crime in our society. So there are a number of factors which guide that process. As the inmate makes progress and is reclassified, they are then transferred to a medium or a low-risk institution, as the case may be. Well, I think the first challenge that faces an inmate in any correctional facility is adjusting to the environment that you're in. You no longer have the freedom to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And to the extent that one is in an indisciplined society, it poses an even further challenge. Certain practices that an individual might have, such as smoking or any other social habits, are also curtailed. So that creates quite a bit of pressure, that sudden change to the environment. In addition, one does not have their own space. It is usually shared accommodation, and you have to now adjust very quickly to the persons who share that space with you, and you also can be subjected to intimidation, bullying, etc. So the extent to which you adjust to the environment that you're in is the extent to which you'll be successful. It's no different from a high school or a college in terms of the effects of peer pressure and the effects of norms that are established in that particular institution. In addition, getting information, communicating with your relatives, being in touch with your children, all of those now are new challenges because you no longer have direct access, or you have limited access. Diet is another issue. You have to adjust to institutional cooking, and you also have to do your own chores, especially for the males who are not accustomed to taking care of all of their domestic chores in our culture, you suddenly realize that you do all things for yourself. The first challenge that faces an inmate on entry is for them to indicate issues related to their health. That is very important to us, because the quicker we know the types of medical challenges that faces an individual, the better we're able to respond. Or if the person has any particular disabilities or possible mental illness, all of that is very important. We don't want to have the person incarcerated and then they deteriorate because of late information or lack of information. In many instances, we don't get any medical records or access to medical records easily because we're not automated in terms of our public health records. Visitation generally requires, first of all, registration of visitors. That's a new policy we have, where the visitor needs to provide a certified photo of themselves. They need to complete an application form, and they have to provide proper identification with a passport, a driver's license, or a voter's registration. That information is fed into our central database, and each inmate is now allowed to register 3 visitors. If they wish to change a visitor at any time, that is also subject to the superintendent's decision, but they must be limited to 3 based on our policy, and we have an equal assignment to all inmates so that no inmate gets any particular privilege. In addition, the visits in the regulations provide for 1 visit per month for certain categories of inmates. Appellants have more frequent visits. We have decided to allow 2 visits per month per inmate. And administratively, we're able to cope with that. We do not allow certain items to be brought in for security reasons. And we now have tuck shops providing a vast range of products where the relative can purchase tickets, and those tickets can be used to buy items at the tuck shops. In our regulations, children are not allowed inside adult correctional centers. There's an age limit. So one would have to be 17 years or older. So that would not pose a challenge for us. Adults are the only persons that can actually visit an inmate in an adult correctional center. We have, however, organized what we call family days, and during the family day, inmates are allowed to be taken to an area adjacent to the institution where the family can be brought in to meet with them for, say, 10 minutes. Because of the large number of inmates, if you gave everybody half an hour, some would not get a visit. So it's a new strategy that was developed prior to my taking over. It has worked well, and it's a privilege that we afford the inmates. We have approximately 2 family days a year, usually prior to the return of kids to school during the summer program, and sometimes just prior to Christmas. Legal visits are separate. Inmates have the right to see their attorney in private, within view of the correctional officer, but not within earshot. And we have special areas designated for the attorney-client visits. The regular visits are done in the visitor booths with the family, and the family can also request special visits in the superintendent's office, and that's also based on merit. For me to say what is allowed, because there are very few items that are allowed. One can take a suit of clothing, which the inmate can have access to if they need to go to court. We also allow them to purchase the uniforms that they wear. If they want additional uniforms, they can buy food internally. So in terms of bringing items in, it's primarily restricted to clothing to return to court, and medication. We allow medication in if it's prescribed and subject to approval of the superintendent and the medical officer. In the past, persons used to bring in food daily, cooked meals. They used to bring in clothes daily and almost provided a laundry service. And we have eliminated all of that for security reasons. So all the products that an inmate requires is available through the tuck shop. So there's really no need for the person to purchase and bring in items.
So, Tower Street.
Now this one is dedicated to someone that I love so much.